Okay, in this video, we're going to talk very briefly about the differences between iClicker Classic and iClicker Cloud. In iClicker Classic, we've been using it as we go since 2012, and it replaced an earlier system we had used for several years before that. And it's been used very successfully here, and it's still available at Oswego. With iClicker Classic, faculty will download software to their computer if they're doing this remotely, as we've been doing over the pandemic, or more typically, faculty would download software to a USB drive, and you just take the USB with the software on it into whichever classroom you're using the iClicker Classic software on. Because it couldn't be stored on campus computer lab or the podium computers, because it stores all the grade data right there, and that data would get wiped. So you had to bring your USB drive to class or your own computer to class whenever you were using iClicker Classic. And iClicker Classic works either with physical clickers, they're radio frequency devices, which is how most people use them, especially originally, but it also works with mobile apps, which would work with any web-connected device, a laptop, a Chromebook, or there are app versions for iOS and Android devices as well. And I believe Windows users, people who still have Windows phones, could also use them using the web interface. One limitation of the iClicker Classic is effectively you could use them only for multiple choice questions. And iClicker Classic is integrated with a Blackboard gradebook, so any scores that students receive on it automatically or are easily uploaded into your class gradebook. iClicker Cloud works again with physical clickers, as did the iClicker Classic. With multiple, if you're restricting your answers to multiple choice only, or with a mobile app. And that's where we really get to see some benefits, that if you'd like to go beyond multiple choice in your polling, you may want to consider using iClicker Cloud. The mobile version supports multiple choice questions, multiple select questions, free response questions, numeric responses, or a target where you have some type of an image and students click a point on the image in response to a prompt. And I'll give you some quick examples of each of these in just a couple minutes. The software is cloud-based, so you can, it's cloud-based for students. However, for the instructor, you still do need to log into a program that's downloaded to your computer. But because all the data is stored in the cloud, this could be stored on podium computers, where each instructor would just log into this at the start of class to activate it. Or you could, again, use your own laptop if you're going to be using this remotely, if you're teaching a class in some type of synchronous remote format, or if students are going to be participating remotely. Even in the pre-pandemic period, I would often allow students to participate remotely if they were ill. And on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I would normally see 3/4 or more of the students participating from remote locations using a mobile app, because that is an option with iClicker Classic too, again, as long as you choose to narrow your choices to multiple choice. This iClicker Cloud will be integrated into the Blackboard gradebook. We were hoping that would take place last summer, but CTS was rather busy and didn't quite get around to it. But I am told that this will be enabled this summer. So we'll send out an email once we find out when this has taken place. But even as it is, you still could download all the grades and choose to manually upload them, but it's much easier when it's fully integrated. And the integration with this is through LTI, and it's much simpler and easier than the integration that we currently have with iClicker Classic. The physical clickers look something like this. They cost $20 to $45 new for students. If they buy a new one, they also get a free 6 months or maybe a year subscription to the mobile app. And many students were buying that anyway. And then that would allow them to participate with a mobile technology or using a physical clicker. The physical clickers use radio frequency connections to a base station in the classroom. They're good for roughly 200 meters or so. Certainly it'll work in any, even our largest classrooms, and it will even work from the general vicinity. You generally have to be near the building, if not in the building, to use those. So students wouldn't be able to use radio frequency from their dorm, say, or from downtown Oswego, or from a more remote area to connect to a class. They have to be within the short range radio frequency connections of the base station in the classroom. That base station is used only if you're going to be using physical clickers, and those are provided by CTS, and the provider of iClicker will provide base stations for as many classes, as many classrooms as we need them to be installed in. And all of our large classrooms already have the base stations, and many smaller ones do as well, particularly in those buildings where a large number of departments have been using physical clickers in the past. But again, they can't be used remotely. One reason why some instructors choose these as the only option is because they're reluctant to have students access mobile devices, laptops, or smartphones in the classroom because of the potential distraction that can result from that. The mobile app can be used from anywhere. However, it is possible to do geofencing. I think that's further on the slide, but which means basically students have to be in physical proximity of the classroom to connect. But again, we certainly learned in the pandemic to be a little bit more flexible. And if students are participating remotely by viewing the class over a live stream on Panopto or participating over Zoom, students anywhere in the world could participate. I was using this last semester, in the fall semester of 2020, and I had students in 3 other countries, actually. Some of our international students participating from their home, connecting to class and participating in the quizzes using the mobile apps. You still have the option of using the physical clickers with the iClicker Cloud option, but again, that will only work if you are using only multiple choice questions. And the use of the mobile app, though, iClicker Cloud, does require that connections to the web be enabled. So if students lose their internet connections, which is much less common now than it used to be, but occasionally we do see network drops on campus, some students will not be connected or will lose their connections, and you may end up having to drop a day's work of clicker questions. That again had become much less common in the couple years before the pandemic, and we're hoping that will still not be a major problem in the future. Some things, again, as I already mentioned, if you don't want to allow mobile devices in your class, either system will work, either iClicker Classic or Cloud, as long as you have a base station to receive those signals. If you want to use numeric free response or the image map questions, only the cloud version will work. So if you are new to clickers, I'd strongly encourage you to try the iClicker Cloud. It offers more options and still does everything that the classic version will do. If students attend remotely, again, either one can work, but again, you're limited to multiple choice only. And I mentioned the geofencing. Now, here are some examples that I just put together very quickly. I was hoping we'd have more people attending so we could actually work through these. But here's an example. I didn't intend to put the animation in there, where it asks students what will happen if there's an increase in immigration, and then students would pick whichever one of those is correct. And only one of those was correct. And typically students will have, a number of students will get that wrong. And so I often will put in a follow-up question that will build to the answer in case the question was too challenging, and that's one that's likely to lead to some challenge for many students. So now I'm asking them a question that will scaffold up to that earlier question, and it asks them, and this now is a multiple answer where there's more than one correct answer. In particular, an increase in immigration will lead both to more demand for labor and more supply. More supply comes from the more immigrants entering the country who now are looking for work. More demand will come when those immigrants actually start buying things. And as they buy things, it creates more demand for the labor that produces things. And then once students see this, I would often go back and have them answer that other question again. And you can do that as a way of letting students do a quick response on something, and then perhaps having them delve a little bit more deeply if they don't see the answer immediately. And you can always set it up where you have a few of these things to help support understanding if students don't do well initially. And that's one where it's likely that they may occur. But the difference is, in that first question I asked, only one answer could be provided. They had to choose A, B, C, or D. In this case, they would have the option of choosing two options, or well, they could choose as many as they want, but only two of them are correct. And you can set up how those partial credits will be allocated if they only answer part of the question correctly, or if they choose an incorrect response. You also can ask students you can also ask students to do numeric responses. And this is a trivial example where you ask them to compute something, and then they get to enter a response. They all display on the screen, and you get to pick which answers are correct, and it will automatically grade them, and then you can upload those grades later. The target area is somewhat interesting, where here I have a question which asks people to select the share of the tax that's paid by consumers when a tax is imposed. Now, this I had used back when I was doing some multiple choice. And the only option here that's correct turns out to be answer A. But what happens is a student on a mobile device or on a laptop would simply click on that area. And because I'm not enrolled as a student in this class, it's just going to toggle to the next page. But if they either tap on that portion of the screen, or if they click on the mouse in that portion of the screen, it will put a point there, which will be their response. And then the instructor will see where all those points are and chooses a rectangle to select which answers are correct. And again, that will automatically be graded and enter into the gradebook. Clicker, I'll click on this link, which apparently I did not make clickable. So I will grab that link, and I actually had it, I had it over here set up, but I'll go to that page, and this is a list of the feature differences between iClicker Cloud and iClicker Classic. iClicker, on the right is iClicker Classic, on the left is iClicker Cloud. iClicker Cloud offers GPS attendance, restricting the area where students can respond from to a specific area. You got more types of questions, and you have an online gradebook where you can see grades from anywhere without going into Blackboard, or students can see the grades on the Clicker questions alone without going into Blackboard. You can export the grades into Excel. You can integrate, or the automatic uploads and connections to, we're finishing up one section, sorry, automatically connect to Blackboard. And the demographics is rarely used anyway, but that is a feature of iClicker Classic. And the data is backed up in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about your USB drive being corrupted and so forth. But you do need an internet connection in order to use iClicker Cloud. You can't, though, do that with, well, you can work without an internet connection as long as you have a receiver with iClicker Classic. And that's a very brief overview. If you have any questions, stop by the CELT office or send me an email, and I'm happy to give you some assistance on this.